Welcome to the Mike and Meta Show.
Well, it's good to be here.
Hey, we wanted to talk today about some funny stories, perhaps, that come out of the Dildo Factory.
Yeah, there's some good ones, I think.
I'm hoping so.
Yeah.
I know when we started Tantus, I went and visited my father right after. And, you know, when I disclosed what I was doing, he smirked.
That's a pretty funny story all to itself.
Well, that was, you know, because dildos, they're kind of funny. And owning a dildo factory is a really kind of
I think that's the funny part, because I think we take our products pretty damn seriously.
Yeah.
But there's some funny stories that come with owning a dildo factory.
Hilarious stories.
And I think we need everyone to keep in mind that while the world looks at Tantus potentially as some big conglomerate, which is bizarre, there's like 13 or 14 of us. And
a good day.
And over the course of the years, almost 20, coming up on 25 years, it's actually kind of funny what, coming up on 23 years, it's kind of funny what people have done over the times.
Yeah. Well, today I think this may actually work into multiple times that we talk about this, but today I wanted to bring up Blems. Blems are blemishes. Because we make thousands of dildos, there's going to be a percentage that just do not pass muster.
Yeah, like depends on the form factor, but some can be as low as 2%, and some can be at 2%, and some can be as high as 15%.
Yeah. And sometimes getting it into production, we have a higher percentile difficulty than once we figured out all the clues of making it.
Right.
Easy.
And this, like in any manufacturer, you're first starting running your production line on a certain part.
It's just like a widget.
Yeah, it's a widget, which we talked about in one of our other videos about, you're just making widget A, box B to customer C.
So blemishes are a fact of life with Tantus. And one of the first stories I remember about blemishes, because we have them, they build up, is we had a chemical salesperson named Butch and this was way back when we were in Colorado, when we first began. And he had taken a whole bunch of our blemishes with him to give to people at his office because they had asked him for some samples. And he accidentally was driving. Well, he wasn't accidentally driving. He was driving on purpose to the Rocky Mountain Flats.
So let me interrupt. This was a vendor that came to visit. Vendor that came to visit Tantus
on a regular basis.
And while he was there, he said, "Hey, do you think I could get a few products?"
And so we gave him some.
A bag of Blems. Yeah. Okay.
And then he went and visited some other customers, and one of the other customers was Rocky Flats Weapons Depot in Colorado. And they had a gate check, and they went through his trunk, and voila,
a bag
explaining
of dick.
A bag of dick.
That's pretty funny. Sergeant, they're mine. They must have, I was driving down the road and my trunk was loose and I hit a pothole and I thought it was a raccoon that jumped inside, but it must have been a bag of dick.
So that was one of my first memories. What about you?
Oh boy, my first memory is with our daughter, Athena. So I think a lot of people may or may not know this about you, but you started at least your job prior to owning a dildo factory was Renaissance Fair.
Yes, I managed a booth at Renaissance Fair.
Right. So you have a long history in Renaissance Fair across the whole North America, right? And so when you're doing this for so many years, your children are involved with Renaissance Fair. They're called fair brats, and little kids running all over. And as they grow up, they become a more and more vital role in your...
Yeah. First of all, they start helping you do breaks or something. And then they inevitably end up working, usually for someone else.
Right. So our daughter Athena, we were at Southern Fair, and the vendor's son, the owner of the booth's son, was doing, and I can never remember the name of the fair, but it's the one at Lake Tahoe, which I should know since we were in that area, and that's our local fair. The Lake Tahoe Fair, which I believe is a 2-weekend fair.
Yes.
The vendors can camp at the fair site, but the attendees cannot.
Right.
So Athena was leaving to go to that fair, or I can't remember how it happened, but Athena ended up with 2 giant bags of non-conforming parts or blemishes.
Right. When she had visited us.
Then that's right. And then we went up to Southern Fair, and Southern Fair is right outside of Pasadena, Monrovia, et cetera, the north, whatever that's called, part of Los Angeles. I know LA people will not call that Los Angeles. It's Los Angeles.
To the rest of us, anyway.
To the rest of the world, right? The greater Los Angeles region. And anyway, so she had these 2 giant bags of dick in her car. And halfway through the Southern show, they had to drive up to Lake Tahoe to do that show. So they went up to Lake Tahoe, and I think it was the first weekend. They set up the booths on Wednesday, Thursday, or whatever, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Friday night, the night before the show, everyone's partying and la-di-da. They go do the show on Saturday. Saturday night, first day of the show, everyone's just completely happy, all the people that are working the show. Athena decides to, later in the evening.
Athena and her friends.
Yeah, Athena and her friends. But Athena decides to go to the car. Lo and behold, there's 2 giant bags of dicks. Well, she thinks this is funny. She comes back to the booth and starts throwing.
I think that there was a mass.
Yeah, well, she starts throwing
creative.
She starts throwing
bare fun.
Dick. She starts throwing dick ammo at everybody. Everyone else starts reaching into the bag. They start chasing each other all through the whole fairgrounds, throwing dildos around.
We were not there.
We were not there. We heard this on the phone as they were
afterwards
banished forever from the show. They get in a huge dildo fight, and the owner comes in an hour before the show the next morning, looks around the fairgrounds, and there's dildos everywhere where the public and kids and all these people are going to come in.
Mind you, Athena was like 18, 19 at the time. It was not the wisest choice on her part. It was the only fair she was ever banished from.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you can only imagine the pause that the show owner took, as he was happy the second day of the show. First day went really well. I walk into my fairgrounds and oh my God. Who's threw the fluorescent dicks everywhere?
Oh, it was sad.
Yeah. So I was
a little disappointed in her choice.
So we get a call from the booth owner's son, saying, guess what? This happened. We're both banned. We're both banned for life. We're coming back.
He was a little older.
We're coming back to Southern Fair, Dad. Yeah, that's probably my first. That one and the wood chipper story are my first.
Wait a second. What about the jacuzzi?
The jacuzzi's a good story too.
Let's go into the jacuzzi. This is the problem of being at home and being casual and having a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So I had I hadn't officially started working at Tantus yet. And I had come to visit you.
Right.
And you had given me a bag of toys, a bag of Blems, parts that don't necessarily pass our quality control, but they're totally
so near.
Yeah, they're totally playable. Anyway, so you had given me a bag of Blems. And this has got to be like a Monday night or something, because I don't exactly remember the day, but I know it ended up being on a weekday. It's like a Monday night, and I had a jacuzzi that was attached to my swimming pool, and it was raised about 3 feet above the side of the swimming pool. Mm-hmm. So it was perched like this giant parapet over the swimming pool, but behind it was a big hedge and stuff like that. And so my wife at the time and I decided to have some fun and take the toys out to the jacuzzi. And
like you do.
Right. And we also had first time I ever used J-Lube. So we decided to make, for those of you who don't know what J-Lube is, it's a veterinary birthing lubricant for birthing calves. And it's a powder-based lubricant.
And you make a lot of it.
Yeah, you can mix it with, it's a really great lube, and you mix it with water and you can make like 5 gallons of lube. So, you know, just dunk your hand and see where it goes. Anyway, so we had this bucket of lube, or, you know, a pail of lube, and we start playing with toys and drinking wine and all kinds of things and experimenting with Tantus toys, and end up at that, finishing that night and going in and falling asleep. And she had to get up and go to work the next morning. And as she's walking out, she looked at me and said, hey, don't forget, the gardeners are coming today. Don't forget to pick up the yard. Well, we had 2 Labradors at the time. Yes, you did. So I, you know, I'm still a little hungover or whatever. And I go out into the backyard and I pick up all the dog poop, you know, clean it up really good so the gardeners don't step in it and mow it and do whatever gardeners do. So I'm standing at the kitchen sink, which is not facing the pool. It's facing a side yard. And I see my gardeners walk in and they're like, hey, Mike, how's it going? And I wave to them. And as they walk past me, I realized
it wasn't the dog poop.
That she said clean up the yard had nothing really to do with the dog poop. It had everything to do with the literally probably 30 dildos and buckets of lube, or a bucket of lube laying around the jacuzzi. So I go running, and I think I was on the phone to you at the time. I know
you were.
And I go, oh shit. And I go running around to the back of the house, and I look, I hear the blowers. 2 of the gardeners had the blowers. It was a pretty big yard. 2 of the gardeners had their blowers going. And all of a sudden as I'm running to look out the back window, the sliding door, the blowers stop. And I look up at these 2 gardeners who are just completely frozen.
And as I recall,
looking down into the jacuzzi, going, what in the fuck?
And as I recall, you went immediately to your office, which couldn't.
Oh yeah, I had to run and hide.
And you were hiding there, and you called me.
Yeah, I called like, oh my God.
This
oh my
just
God.
happened.
Yeah, the gardeners never, you know, they were still my gardeners. Uh-huh. They never mentioned anything about it. And when they left and I went back out to the jacuzzi to actually clean the yard at this time, there were probably 2 vibrators. One was laying on the side of the jacuzzi, and it was like 99% out of battery, but it was sitting there going,
hey.
And then there was one in the water on one of the steps in the jacuzzi that you could see was still vibrating.
Wow.
Those poor gardeners. That was rough, man.
Well, as long as we're making toys, there will always be some small percentage of Blems. What stories will come from it? Who knows? But that one, these are memorable ones.
Yeah, these, you know, I mean, I guess they don't, you know, the visual in my brain of those gardeners standing around that jacuzzi, just, I mean, they weren't even high-fiving like, whoa, someone had a good time. They were just like
jaw dropped. Well, thank you. Yeah. Do you have anything else to add?
I don't. I mean, I have some more stories. Do you have any stories?
We forgot the wood chip.
Yeah, the wood chipper.
The wood chipper. The creme de la creme of the stories.
Yeah. So when I had started, we had
blend.
Yeah. So we get our silicone. For people who don't know, we either get it in pails, drums, or totes.
Right.
The majority of our silicone comes in 55-gallon drums, some in totes, some in pails. So we had a lot of 55-gallon barrels laying around, and we would use them. We either give them away to farmers or to people going to Burning Man, right, or et cetera, for water. We also used them at the time, we used them to take the Blems and store the Blems, because you cannot regrind silicone like TPRs, TPEs. There's no add back.
Right.
Silicone either catalyzes and it's done. So before we found a way to dispose of it, these things lived in 55-gallon drums. They'd be cut into little pieces and live in 55-gallon drums, or just thrown into 55-gallon drums. And the one problem, while it's not illegal to put toys, these catalyzed silicone, which is really healthy actually, to put it back into the landfill.
Right.
We did not want to do. Yeah, we didn't want to do it as whole toys. Right.
Right.
So that's right. So these barrels were full of whole toys. And then we
cut them up.
No, we didn't at the time.
Right.
That was what we learned later on. So we just hand cut them as we go, and then end up in the landfill. So these drums, and I'm thinking there were 22 drums at the time. 22 55-gallon drums full of, and so we were always constantly, how do we get rid of this? How do we make space in the warehouse? How do we get rid of these? So one of our engineers was driving to work in the morning, and he sees a rental yard, like U.S. Rental or something like that. And he sees rent a wood chipper, and for like an extra $10, you get a warranty with it. So no matter what happens to the wood chipper, you're good. Right. So he comes in, it's like $100 to rent the thing, and like an extra $10. So for $110, we figure, what the hell? We're going to get rid of 22 barrels. We're going to
This will be awesome.
Yeah, we're going to, Waste Management's going to bring us a dumpster. We're going to tell them what we're doing, and we're going to get rid of all this stuff. One or two dumpsters. Yeah.
Jeff was very creative.
Yeah. Brilliant. So we get this wood chipper, get a barrel over by the dock door. This is a big commercial wood chipper. Back the wood chipper up to the dock door, open the chute on the back, flip up the snoot on the front, start the wood chipper, and decide, well, before we do this, we better test it, see what happens, right? So I take this toy and I drop it into the wood chipper, and it chucks it. We didn't have the front of the snoot down, and it chucks it like over the street. I believe, unfortunately, by accident, it went into the San Diego harbor. Like we were right across the street from the harbor in San Diego, but it was probably a 200-yard huck, 300-yard huck. And we're like, oh my God, did it break? Well, we didn't know because it was gone. It flung it.
Whoops.
So we tipped the snoot down into the trash can. We weren't thinking. And I take another toy. Matter of fact, I think I took another toy, threw it into the wood chipper, and all you hear is thump. And they look inside the dumpster, and there's a dildo fully intact. And I'm like, they're like, did you throw it in the center, or did you go to the side? I'm like, well, I guess I can't tell you.
The physics of how to dispose of your dildos in the
right. So I figure, well, I can't mess with 3. I mean, I did play baseball, and I thought I had a pretty good aim.
Don't go fast.
So I take 3 and I throw them into the center this time, perfect of the blades of the wood chipper. And it goes, you hear this thump, thump, thump.
Now we must be getting in there. Right.
So here we go. We're going to start dumping dildos in, and they look in and they're like, nothing happened to them. And so someone climbed in and we pulled one out, and there's like a black line, but it never cut it. All it did was huck them at like 5,000 miles an hour into the dumpster. So I grab a handful more, thinking there's something wrong with this. We speed this thing up as hard as it goes, and we throw them in. Thump, 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 thump. Look, they didn't damage the toys at all.
There was no getting rid of those Blems.
No getting rid of them. So we literally, after doing like 8 toys and hucking one across the street, so that'd be 9, we just turned the wood chipper off, drove it back to the rental place, and gave it in.
We tried.
So the funny part of the story is that, way back when people weren't as familiar with silicone, is we would end up going out and doing trainings at stores, fascination stores, and stores all across America. And I would get a question from time to time of, well, what I really want to know, Mike, is how durable are your toys? And I would say,
be careful what you ask.
Yeah, well, you can throw them in a wood chipper and they'll still make it. And then they would look at me like, how do you know this?
Oh, we know
And
this.
so I would end up telling the story and people would die. But yeah, the Blems stories, they're countless. I mean, there's some really funny stories. You know, our Blems from our employees have made it to
Burning Man,
Ren Fairs. Yeah, they've made it all over the place. Yeah,
all over, all with stories too.
Yeah.
I remember Plaid used to use the vibrator, the Blems with vibrator inserts as shot glasses.
Oh yeah.
And then I think they also used them catapulting.
Well, the other thing we did is I made the one for wakeboarding. Where we put the insert in and called it the dick flag, and anyone who came out wakeboarding with us would have to hold on to.
So well weighted.
Yeah, hold on to the
flags. Do not.
So for anyone who doesn't know, wakeboarding, water skiing, typically in most states, I don't know in Florida or Texas, I think those are the two, but you need a person driving the boat, you need a person skiing, and you actually need an observer, which holds up a flag. And so when the person's skiing, the flag's down. When the person is
in the water,
or have fallen, or you lift it, you raise the flag up.
So you were warning.
So you're warning other boats that there's a person in the water around you.
Yeah.
And so we had a toy at the bottom molded onto the bottom of our little flag. And we called it the dick flag. Yeah. So some people would come into the boat, you know, that were a little, I don't know if they were homophobic or anyway, they were a little more uptight than we were. So when they're like, oh yeah, I can get to go wakeboarding with you. Awesome. Yeah. Here, hold the flag. And they'd just be like, whoa. What the fuck? Yeah. So
good stories.
Pretty funny stuff.
Good stories.
Well, I just say thank you very much. And,
bottoms up.
Yeah. I think bottoms up for sure. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for coming to the Mike and Meta Show.